Okay, well, my question's all around CBDCs. So the first is, would commercial and digital banks not then try and become sort of VPNs for the CBDC? So
Yes.
they basically a VPN. Or alternatively, a company gets created that would act as a VPN.
So the CBD thing, I see an issue coming up which I haven't seen. That I don't know. I was in the bath a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my god, the DigiPound would actually end up being an economic drain. So put it this way, let's say, magic wand, we have DigiPound announced, right? And let's say the government does their thing of, hey, open up your Digi wallet, you'll get an extra £100 or whatever. You'll have mass adoption very quickly, because everyone wants that 100 quid. And let's say, fast forward, cash is all gone. We're now just fully in, or we're about to transition into full DigiPound. Now, when you look at the big boys, so anyone with millions of pounds worth of deposits and not invested in market, but sat there in cash, they're going to be looking at this from the risk perspective. So they can either sit in cash, which is actually a liability on a commercial bank. So if for example, if I've, let's say, got £1 million sat in a Barclays bank account, that £1 million is actually a liability on the bank's balance sheet, because they owe you £1 million. Because technically, any money you put in your bank account is no longer your property. I hope you know that. You put £10 in your bank account, it's no longer your property. So when you go to the cash point and withdraw your £100, they are loaning that £100 to you. So, and that's why banks can get away with doing all sorts of rubbish, because it's actually not your money. They're just playing with their own money. So if I've got, say, £1 million sat there, that's a £1 million liability on the bank's balance sheet. That's one thing. And also, we then get into a buy sort of risk thing where I then look at, okay, is it safer for me to hold £1 million with Barclays and run the risk of Barclays going bust? Or is it actually safer for me to have £1 million in DigiPound, where it's actually backed by the Bank of England, where there is zero risk? So Barclays going bust is not a zero risk probability. There is some element of probability there. So what will happen is, if someone, let's say someone didn't believe in all the kooky conspiracy type stuff that I talked about earlier, and they're like, oh, actually, there's way more safety in the DigiPound than Barclays. I'm going to withdraw my Barclays £1 million and put it into DigiPounds. What then happens is I'm now withdrawing assets from the Barclays balance sheet. So if one person did it, it doesn't make a difference. What if every millionaire in the UK, or every company that had over £1 million, did that? All of a sudden, that's a bank run, isn't it? All of a sudden, the capital adequacy ratios for all these commercial banks are then going up the yin-yang, because the banks aren't in the business of lending. They're in the business of securing or acquiring securities. So when you put money in a bank, all that's happening is the bank is getting, sorry, let me rephrase my words here. If everyone takes their money out of Barclays Bank, that's then screwing up their balance sheet, which means all of a sudden they have nothing backing up all of the derivatives that they're doing, of all the fancy stuff that they're doing, because they're using our capital, to a degree, as collateral. And just like what happened with FTX, where all of a sudden everyone started taking their money off FTX, etc., it's the same thing for the banks. So if every millionaire in the UK does that, and the bank runs have a bank, and all the banks have a bank run, they're actually going to go to pot. They're going to go bust, or they're not going to like it. So the commercial banks don't actually like CBDCs. And also, because it will then turn into a real-time gross settlement system where the Bank of England is in the middle of every single transaction, there is technically no need for a commercial bank like Barclays. No need. So what will happen is, as capital is being taken out of the banking sector, what are the banks going to do? they're going to try and shore up their losses. They're not going to lend to anyone. So when lending drops, guess what? Economic prosperity or economic activity also drops. You have to understand that the more lending there is in an economy, the economy grows a lot faster because businesses are borrowing, people are borrowing to spend, etc. If people aren't able to get loans from the commercial banks because they're just going, oh shit, everyone's taking their money, we're not going to lend to anyone, all of a sudden it becomes a bit of a downward spiral. So here's what I actually think will happen. I actually think there will be another banking crisis because what happened with FTX, that's no different than what the banks are doing with our money, but just on a bigger scene. I reckon big commercial banks like Deutsche Bank, I think Deutsche Bank is the equivalent of FTX, will go bust. Barclays will go bust. Santander will go bust. I see it happening within the next 10 years. And instead of the government bailing out the banks like they did in 2008 and the public going crazy over it, they'll probably say, oh yes, we've learned from our lessons, bailing out the banks didn't work, we're just going to let them die. And so all the banks die. So now, let's say you've got 50 grand in your Barclays account, and Barclays goes bust. This is a great PR opportunity for the Bank of England and the government. They go, don't worry. You've lost your 50 grand in Barclays, screw Barclays, we're going to let them die, because they're not needed, they're dinosaurs. We've just opened up a new Digi wallet for you, and we are just printing $50,000 of DigiPound, and it's in this wallet ready for you. All you need to do is just sign up to get access to it. What would you do? You'd sign up and get your 50 grand's worth of DigiDollars or DigiPounds straight away. And that is how I think they're going to screw over the banking sector. They'll just let them die. Because they're literally not needed. So everyone thinks CBDCs are against Bitcoin. They're not. CBDCs are out there to kill fiat currencies and thereby the incumbents, the banks. Sorry, I've gone off on one. What was your question? Sorry.
Would commercial and digital banks not become VPNs in a sense where they've got their own account with the central bank and everything will still happen in real time, but the only difference is the only transaction they're seeing is between the banks and there. So everyone goes there, they can't see anything like a VPN with no login.
I guess it could. I still think they will want full optics on it. In fact, no, I don't think they could because every single penny would be fully trackable. It's like, there's a serial number on every pound note, like £5 note or whatever. Every penny will have its own hash. So even if your 1 penny went into a pool, like a dark pool of Barclays dark pool, that will still be completely tracked. Even there won't be a way to obscure it. And also, I think to begin with, they will encourage the banks to help propagate it out there because, it's the front end which the Bank of England don't want to deal with. The Bank of England does not want to deal with Tom, Dick, and Harry complaining about their bank account or DigiWallet. So there will be companies like Revolut or or Barclays even, let's say, that will be the front end. And they'll still do customer service, etc. But think about it. If I'm a big bank and I see I'm about to be disintermediated over the next 5, 10 years, I need to pivot my business model, ASAP. Just like Revolut is coming in, killing all the banks by giving better service, better UI on the app, more insurance, free skiing insurance, or whatever. Banks will have to pivot to being extra awesome at customer-facing stuff, and they'll just be the front end. And they'll all have an API into the big bank, but ultimately, we don't know. That's my... Yes?
Question. Yeah, question. It's a really silly question, but if you just turned around, if you think about the proportion of people actually who have got a lot of money and have a lot of funds, in fact, most of these are in government or related on corporations, they're not going to put their money into CBDCs, are they? Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised at how dumb big groups of people are. And how they tend to drink their own Kool-Aid. Sorry? Oh yeah. And also they're all loving the idea. I like to think, and this is going back to rational thinking and stuff like that. Me sat here, I like to think I'm looking forward and trying to forecast as accurately as I can think. But my views that I've shared today to a lot of conventional bankers and whatever, would be absolute hearsay, utter poppycock, they would say. It was nothing but conspiracy theories. They would just dismiss it straight away. I don't think anyone really understands the ramifications of CBDCs. Like, a good example of this is when the videos come out of, let's say we take the CBDC presentation, and you get the video, send it to 10 of your most conservative send it to your financial advisor, see what they say. I think you'll be surprised.
What do you think the UK version of the central bank digital coin will be backed by?
The Bank of England.
It'll have to be backed by something.
It doesn't. The current fiat is not backed by anything.
Well, as you can see, they're all dying, aren't they?
Yeah. CBDCs are designed and they're inherently flawed. Eventually they will die. They are massively flawed.
As the East turns towards BRICS Union and the commodity-backed currencies, the ruble is now pegged to the gold.
Yeah,
China next.
Sort of. It's more pegged to Russian gas than...
Yeah, gas, gold, commodities.
Yeah.
India will follow suit, I think, and Brazil and the other countries that are in BRICS. What will we have to offer with our fairy money to them?
World War III is the only thing that could stop it, really. What you brought up is massive. It's spot on, mate. It is. So the BRICS, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're rising nations, very powerful, very commodity rich, and also, economically speaking, they're growing big time. So Russia, obviously, I mean, they've benefited economically way more now since the sanctions because they've just backed the ruble with their assets, mainly gas. And so if the BRICS got together and created a brand new currency, it's game over for the West. It's game over for the dollar straight away. The interesting thing is Saudi Arabia is now cozying up to China and Russia. So the underlying thing that's ever backed the dollar is the petrodollar system. Who's not familiar with the petrodollar system? Okay, you're familiar. Basically, all oil transacted in the world, you all have to convert into the dollar, etc. So if, I don't know, Germany was buying oil from Iran, they'd both have to swap their currencies into the dollar, do the transaction. So yeah, and every time someone's tried to get rid of the petrodollar system, we have to install freedom into those countries and invade them.
That's what happened with Gaddafi, wasn't it?
Exactly, the gold dinar. So for those not familiar with why Gaddafi got ousted, he was pooling all of Africa's gold together and some Middle Eastern countries, and he was pooling a gold supply like 2 to 3 times bigger than any known gold supply. And he was about to create a brand new currency system called the gold dinar. He announced this at the UN. It's on YouTube. It's a 1 hour and 4 minute speech he made, and he announced it. I watched all of it. It's fascinating. The amount of plastic surgery he had was phenomenal. But we invaded his country within 3 months, and he was dead within 3 months. And he had 144 tons of gold in his personal stash, which has still never been found. So, but yeah. So that would have killed the dollar.
One more question.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier with Libya that there were 2 other countries without central banks.
I think Liechtenstein and Singapore, but I think my data is outdated. Sorry?
North Korea?
Oh yeah, North Korea is one, yes, for sure. I can't remember. I think it's
Afghanistan
outdated.
was one.
Yeah, I don't know what it is now. But I know, yeah, Libya is screwed now. So, yeah, it's ironic. We bombed the shit out of them, then we set up a central bank to then get a loan to fix the stuff that we bombed, which is a bit shit, really. Yeah. It's a bit like me punching you in the face and roughing you up, then forcing you to get a loan from me to pay for your medical bills. Like, that's what we did. Horrendous. Yes, no, next question, sorry.
There was a gentleman, yeah, there he is.
Okay, great. Earlier you were talking about CBDCs and the fact that central banks can choose what you can do with your money. Do you think that obviously for the moment, because Bitcoin is still proof of work, that the miners need to spend money to buy rigs and also buy electricity? Do you think that the central bank, because they don't like Bitcoin or see it as a peer-to-peer digital cash system that isn't traceable for them, that they can try and shut it down by not letting the miners acquire electricity or new equipment?
They could do. The miners will always then have to pivot, right? So yeah, each country could try and shut down the miners. So China has just booted out most of its miners. There are still miners there, but they booted out most of it. So what happened with the hash rate? Hash rate dropped precipitously. And as we expected, there was a 3 to 6 month lag whilst they all shut up shop and went over to Iceland or something like that. And then hash rate picked up. But what happened, actually, it was a good thing because all of the dirty coal miners just stopped working. And the Western miners, who are mostly renewable, I think over 86% of Western miners use renewable energy, flared methane or solar or whatever it is. So it actually helped. But I guess the only way, I mean, you'll never kill Bitcoin because if all of a sudden there's a massive hash rate drop, the difficulty rating or level will also drop with it. And so they will find some sort of equilibrium because unless you banned Bitcoin mining in every country in the world, I think it would just go underground. Like heroin is illegal in every country in the world. It's still a massive freaking market, isn't it? Josh, do you have any, like we have the miner himself here, Josh. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so in that example, Siam was entirely right. We had a new all-time high hash rate in mostly precedented from China. That'll move to Kazakhstan within 6 months. So interestingly, even now, when the market's on its arse, comparatively, we have a new all-time high Bitcoin hash rate. So things will keep moving. And as Siam said, you know, in Bitcoin, you have a difficulty rate that adjusts every 2 weeks. So even if every country in the world simultaneously shut down Bitcoin at the same time, the Bitcoin network itself could run with the transactions and TPSs that we have today, just with a couple of machines in a basement, because the difficulty will adjust to a point where that's going to happen. So quite frankly, if that happens, we've got World War III nukes and the end of days where no one's going to care about Bitcoin because it'll be, where am I going to eat? So ultimately, I think you're entirely right. You know, I think this perfect mechanism that Satoshi designed is, you know, ubiquitous across a lot of the proof of work coins, and things will naturally just adjust and find that equilibrium.
And the cool thing is, Bitcoin is also World War III proof. So if let's say we have a solar flare, and all electronics is wiped out, we have World War III, everyone dies, blah, blah, blah. All Bitcoin needs to continue living is just one ledger to not be wiped out. One ledger is all it takes. So all of humanity could die, and you know, there's a global population of 1,000 people. All it takes is one of those 1,000 people to have a computer and an intact ledger, and then Bitcoin is still will live, whereas every other fiat currency will just die. I mean, you could, if you take the UK insurance market, you could literally kill and wipe out all of the UK's insurance data by taking out, I think, 3 data centers. One of them is in Norwich, by the way. I know that. And there is a war procedure where if energy was really, if there was like a petrol or energy crisis, etc., Norwich, those data centers in Norwich have one of the priorities. So they would rather let people die of starvation than let that data center go to like die. So yeah, if you take out these 3 data centers all at the same time, all of the insurance data will be wiped out, gone. Now, I'm hoping they have backups in other countries. That would be the smart thing to do. Actually, Sean's very modest, right? Am I allowed to talk about the MOD bit? No? No, okay. He is a contractor for a very big thing. Sorry. What are your thoughts? Like, I'm putting you on the spot, but I just want to pick your brains because, yeah.
Do you know what? I've actually just lost what we were talking about. Putting me on the spot like that.
I don't know myself.
I got a couple of questions. The first one, you were talking about centralized banking. And my question was, gold, silver, and platinum coins, do you think they're dead?
I hope not, because I still have some gold and silver coins, which I haven't been able to get rid of. I didn't buy them off Siam, but yeah. I think, for me, I don't have a huge amount. I think I got a monster, it's 500 silver coins, box of those. And it's kind of like a little bit of hedge in case everything goes wrong and I need to. I think there'll always be a need for that, but if we sit in this tinfoil hat and CBDCs do genuinely take over, they've got to overcome things like this first as well. And they've got to find ways to shift the mindset from people from holding those sorts of commodities, or they've got to come up with some way of backing it by gold or whatever. But that kind of undermines the point of it. And so I think they've got a few hurdles to get through. I know you're sort of saying probably the next 10 years. I think some of those hurdles are so ingrained generationally that we may be looking at longer than that. But yeah, I still think that there is some utility, that's not right, in gold. I think there's still some use in people holding that, and I think people will continue. And it's going to be a big narrative shift to get people away from that. I think maybe younger generations, so it's just a time thing of just waiting for people to move, and then it's just more of a PR campaign of you don't need to be investing. Who wants to spend $1,600 on one tiny little ounce of gold? That kind of sales pitch, and just try and convince them that way. Maybe that's what it is, but that's a generational play, so a much longer time frame.
I've completely shifted my opinion on gold and silver. For those who don't know, I used to be a bullion dealer. I think you're losing out on opportunity cost by gold and silver. So of any asset in the world, it's the one that has the biggest inverse correlation to the US dollar. So if you look at the dollar chart or the Dixie, if that goes up, gold and silver goes down, that goes down, this goes up. So really, the only thing that's going to push gold and silver prices up is if the dollar goes down. Now, how is that going to happen? If they start doing crazy printing, that's going to do... yeah, they're not, okay, they're paused for the moment, but they will, it's just a matter of time until they, the economy falls to pieces and then the Fed goes, let's print, then dollar will shoot down, gold will go up. But I think there's a temporary win there for gold and silver. But long term, I just don't see it happening. I think if you're really bullish on gold, like the potential ROI over, let's say, a 5-10 year period is, I don't know, let's say here, like this, whatever that is. If you then compare that opportunity cost to crypto is like as high as you want. So I think you're just much better putting your money in really good stocks like Tesla, which is basically like 12 companies under one umbrella, or crypto, personally. And the only thing that would actually make gold go to the moon is if China were to back a portion of their currency supply by gold. And I've done a video out there. If they were to just back 1% of their currency supply with gold, gold goes to $40,000, just like that. But I don't want to wait on a freaking government to maybe or may not do that. Instead, I'd much prefer to have my bags in crypto. And then if there are rumblings of China doing that, because it's not going to happen like that, you'll see rumblings. You'll hear talks and rumors and leaked documents saying that the government's about to back gold, whatever, and then you can take some out of crypto and put some into bullion or whatever. But
going back to the question, so I think there's a bit of a segment.
Oh shit! What was the question?
CBDCs versus gold. How's that going to counterbalance each other?
I don't know actually.
My second question.